given the keys to the city of Kingston, and after delivering another stirring 40-minute address, he began by saying that he had never felt more at home anywhere in the world, adding that in Jamaica, I feel like... Welcome to African Renaissance Time TV. I'm Brother C.C. Blackman. Today we want to take a moment to honor the mighty memory of the Honorable Dr. Martin Luther King. I wanted to give you a little clip of some of the powerful words he spoke on the evening before he died. Dr. King is remembered for a lot of things, but in the common memory of most African Americans, he is not known as a pan-africanist. But I would argue that he was, in fact, a pan-africanist. And I'll explain more about why I feel this way following this clip.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper. If I lived in China or even Russia or any totalitarian country, maybe I could understand some of these illegal injunctions. Maybe I could understand the denial of certain basic First Amendment privileges because they haven't committed themselves to that over there. But somewhere I read of the freedom of assembly. Somewhere I read of the freedom of speech. Somewhere I read of the freedom of press. Somewhere I read that the greatness of America is the right to protest far right. And so just as I say we aren't going to let any dogs or water hoses turn us around, we aren't going to let any injunction turn us around. Well, I don't know what will happen now. We've got some difficult days ahead. But it really doesn't matter with me now because I've been to the mountaintop. I don't mind. Like anybody, I would like to live a long life. Longevity has its place. But I'm not concerned about that now. I just want to do God's will. And He's allowed me to go up to the mountain. And I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. I may not get there with you, but I want you to know tonight that we as a people will get to the promised land. So I'm happy tonight. I'm not worried about anything. I'm not fearing any man. Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord.
As we celebrate the life of the Honorable Martin Luther King, I think it's important for Black Americans in particular to recognize the fact that Martin Luther King was in fact and indeed a pan-Africanist. My evidence for saying this comes from two incidents in the life of Dr. Martin Luther King. The first incident occurred in 1957 when the then Prime Minister of the Gold Coast invited Martin Luther King to attend Ghana's liberation celebration. Kwame Osagyefo Nkrumah, a serious pan-Africanist who said that the freedom of Ghana would mean nothing without the freedom of the rest of Africa, wrote to Martin Luther King, and in his letter he said, "It would give me great personal pleasure if you should be able to attend." It was important for Nkrumah to have a figure like Martin Luther King attend the independence celebrations because his vision of Pan-Africanism extended beyond continental Africa. As a student, Nkrumah came to the United States, and in the 30s and 40s, he saw firsthand the racism that Black people had to endure. and it radicalized his consciousness about Africanness and blackness. And in some ways, it was a contributing force for him to return home in 1947 and eventually become the lead architect of Ghana's independence 10 years later. In response to his invitation to attend Ghana's liberation celebration, Martin Luther King attended with his wife Coretta Scott King. And of the event, he said, "Before I knew it, I started weeping. I was crying for joy." Later in his life, in June of 1965, Martin Luther King was invited to the island of Jamaica to deliver a commencement speech at the University of the West Indies. The speech was entitled, "Facing the Challenges of a New Age." The next day, at a packed civic reception at the National Arena, Dr. King was given the keys to the city of Kingston, and after delivering another stirring 40-minute address, he began by saying that he had never felt more at home anywhere in the world, adding that, "In Jamaica, I feel like a human being," he said. He was proud to be among his brothers and sisters on this wonderful island. Then Dr. King visited the grave of the national hero of Jamaica, the Honorable Marcus Garvey, to lay a wreath out of respect for a man, he said, gave Negroes in the United States a sense of dignity and a sense of personhood and a sense of manhood. He said that Marcus Garvey gave the Negro in America a sense of somebodyness. King would go on to say that back in the 1920s, Marcus Garvey would be the first black man to build a mass movement that would give Negroes a sense of dignity and destiny. The Honorable Marcus Garvey was unapologetically black. He was a black nationalist and an industrialist, and he saw the need for a global African Renaissance. If we look at the actions and behavior of Martin Luther King, it should be clear to all that he would be in favor of a global African Renaissance. This is Brother C.C. Blackman, and thank you for listening.